What if I tell you that sponge divers in Greece accidentally found an ancient computer? They pulled out this artifact from a shipwreck near Antikythera Island in 1901. Scientists called it the Antikythera mechanism and labeled it as the first mechanical computer. The machine looks like a hunk of bronze, but it has some kind of mechanism composed of gears and wheels. So, experts first assumed that it was an astronomer's tool. After an X-ray scan, though, they found out that the instrument was far more complex than they thought. The artifact was meant to calculate astronomical positions, track the 4-year cycle of athletic games, and so on. It contained a box with dials on the outside and had an assembly of gear wheels attached. It's still unknown who built an instrument with this level of artistry 2,000 years ago and why this technology was lost. After seeing how sophisticated the device was, scientists accepted that their perception of ancient Greek engineering wasn't really accurate. Professor Michael Edmonds of Cardiff University admits that based on the knowledge they have, this mechanism shouldn't even exist. Edmonds says the machine is one of a kind and its astronomical calculations are precise. For him, the Antikythera mechanism is more valuable than the Mona Lisa. In 1929, scholars working in Topkapi Palace Museum in Turkey discovered a map. It became famous for being the oldest map showing the Americas. Perry Reese drew this detailed map on a gazelle skin in 1513. He depicted Europe, North Africa, the coast of Brazil, and several islands, such as the Azores and Canary Islands. The most exciting thing is that he created the map only 21 years after Columbus had set foot in the New World. Well, it was new to him. Perry Reese was a maritime scholar and a successful naval commander leading the Ottoman fleet. Yet, while drawing the map, he relied not only on his expertise in sailing. He created it by assembling and referring to 20 other regional maps, like the Arab map of India, 4 Portuguese maps, and the map of the western parts drawn by Columbus. Yes, the part he got from Columbus raised the heartbeat of many historians. Columbus drew a map during his 3rd voyage to the New World and sent it to Spain in 1498. It's assumed to be lost. Surprisingly, historians can now understand what Columbus noted down by looking at Perry Reese's map. Fun fact, he also drew another world map in 1528. Even though only about 1/6 of this map has survived, it's clear that it described the northwestern part of the Atlantic, the region from Venezuela to Newfoundland, and the southern tip of Greenland. The map also showed Antarctica centuries before its discovery. Historians had to rethink the chronology of history after getting this crazy information. Perry Reese described Antarctica's topography without ice in great detail. In the 1930s, workers found dozens of stone spheres in Costa Rica. Locally, they're known as bolas de piedra, literally stone balls. They were made by a civilization lost in time. What's interesting about these balls is their shape. They are perfectly spherical. How ancient people could make such precise shapes is a mystery. The spheres are of different sizes. Imagine a small one, like a tennis ball. Then put another one next to it, 7 feet in diameter. The largest spheres weighed 16 tons. Archaeologists are sure that these balls are human-made. Yet their purpose remains unclear. Some archaeologists claim that the spheres could represent the solar system or could be inspired by various stages of the sun and the moon. Others say that the stone's placement refers to the houses of chiefs. Most of the stone spheres were sculpted from granodiorite. It's a hard rock similar to granite. Experts believe that ancient people used smaller rocks from the same material as tools to shape these spheres. They also think that sculptors probably heated portions of the stones and then cooled them rapidly. This could have helped them to remove the outer layers of rock. Our next one is an ancient battery set found in Iraq in 1936. The set consists of a ceramic pot, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod. At the top, the iron rod is isolated from the copper by asphalt, and both the rod and cylinder fit inside the mouth of the jar. The copper cylinder isn't watertight, so if the pot was filled with a liquid, it would surround the iron rod as well. Archaeologists focus more on the oxidized iron rod because the vessel just needed to be filled with an acid or alkaline substance to produce an electric charge. After examining this bizarre artifact, an Austrian archaeologist hypothesized that the instrument made use of chemical reactions to generate electrical energy. That's why they likened the instrument to a battery. An ancient civilization might have used it for some kind of electrotherapy. Yet there isn't any electroplated object known from this period. So Koenig's hypothesis was rejected by many archaeologists, but nobody has proven him wrong either. The origin and purpose of the vessel remain unclear to this day. So, want to see the world's oldest art studio? In 2011, archaeologists found 100,000-year-old shells in a South African cave. Those shells were used for paint making. A coating of bright red powder on the inside of a pair of shells is the proof. Archaeologists say they found a complete kit used to produce a pigmented mixture. Now, in a different part of the cave, several paintings were displayed with little price tags on them intended for sale. Nah, just kidding. Although that big one over there would look good over my couch. Can you pronounce this name of the Aztec capital city? Yes, it's quite difficult to say in English and above my pay grade. Okay, it's Tenochtitlan. And Mayan cities are hard to pronounce too. Consider Jaxchilan. They must be part of the same language, right? Well, not really. The Aztecs and the Mayas were among the most famous Mesoamerican peoples. That's present-day Central America. But they didn't speak the same language, and they weren't even the same civilization. The two nations lived in different eras. The Aztecs dominated the region from the 14th to the 16th century. Back in Europe, this was near the end of the Middle Ages. The Mayas came before the Aztecs. Historians believe they started building city-states in the 3rd century. Their peak lasted until the 10th century. Now, this doesn't mean that the Mayas and the Aztecs didn't have contact with each other. But at the time this happened, the Mayas were on a decline, so the Aztecs traded more with their descendants than with real Mayan people. The two civilizations didn't even live in the same place. The Aztecs built their cities in the north of what is today Mexico. The Mayas lived to the south of them in the Yucatan Peninsula. Yes, that's also in Mexico nowadays. But the Mayas inhabited parts of modern-day Guatemala and Belize as well, and they spoke a number of languages. There's a whole Mayan language family they spoke, not just one language. Some of those languages have survived through today. Estimates show that there are 6 million indigenous Maya people groups spread across Central America. In Guatemala, there are 21 Maya languages recognized by the authorities. Further north, in Mexico, the number of official languages is 29. For the Aztecs, the situation is much simpler. They had a single language. It still has around 1.5 million native speakers, mostly in central Mexico. That's more than any other family of indigenous languages in the region. But is there a chance a speaker of Aztec languages can understand a speaker of the Maya language? Not by a long shot. The two languages are completely unrelated. In fact, they didn't even share the same writing systems. The Mayans were more advanced because they used hieroglyphs. Yep, like the ancient Egyptians. Instead of letters that make up words, ancient civilizations used tiny pictures to symbolize an object or a concept. When the Mayas wanted to write the word jaguar, for example, they would draw a small image of the animal. In total, their writing system had more than 800 characters like this one. Way too complicated compared to the modern way we write down words. But the Aztecs were one step behind the Mayas. They used pictograms and ideograms. Simply put, these are elaborate drawings that mark an object, animal, or concept. Compared to Mayan hieroglyphs, they aren't simple symbols anyone can draw, but true masterpieces of visual art. Only highly skilled painters could draw them. I don't say right because, technically, the Aztecs didn't have a writing system. So you could say that the Mayas were more advanced when it came to language. After all, they had the only known fully developed language in the Americas before the arrival of Europeans. But in terms of culture and economy, the two societies weren't that much different. Neither of them used work animals for agriculture and transport. The main crop for both peoples? You guessed it, corn. What they called maize. Christopher Columbus was the first to transport corn back to the old continent in 1493. The Mayans also cultivated sunflower, vanilla, and cotton. The Aztecs produced chili, beans, and squashes. When it comes to meat, the Aztecs were happy to catch fish and shrimp. The Mayans penned turkey, just like we do with chicken today. The Aztec society consisted of nobles and commoners, all led by an emperor. The Mayas mostly lived in independent city kingdoms, ruled by a king and his royal household. There were no wheeled vehicles in these civilizations. Aztec merchants traveled across Mesoamerica carrying goods on their backs. Not the most comfortable mode of transportation, definitely. We shouldn't think of Aztec roads as the ones we have today. They were narrower because they saw only foot traffic. Mayas used a similar road system that also included canoes. They wouldn't travel far from the coast, though. They carved out these vessels from large tree trunks. An average Mayan canoe was 50 feet long. That's the length of a modern-day yacht. The goods these Mayas traded ranged from salt to pearls. They considered meat a luxury good, together with gold, copper, and turquoise. And can you guess the currency of Mayan merchants? Let me give you a hint. It wasn't metal and paper like it is today, but cocoa beans. They had a fixed market price, which made them the ideal payment option. The situation in modern societies is not much different. Around 2/3 of all countries have pegged their currency to the US dollar. For Mesoamericans, cocoa beans were their green banknotes. The Aztecs used the same exact currency, but with a twist. They had something called axe money. One axe was worth 8,000 cacao seeds. I bet their exchange offices were fun places to work. When it comes to minerals, jade was highly esteemed in both cultures. The Mayas and the Aztecs made tools and ornaments from it. These peoples believed jade brought beauty and long life to the person who wore it. Their jade mines were located in present-day Guatemala. And remember that city from the beginning that we could hardly pronounce? The founding of the Aztec capital gives an insight into the belief system of the whole nation. According to legend, the Aztec deity told them to build a city in the place where an eagle sits on a cactus with a snake in its talons. They saw this happen on an island in a lake. This is where they built the city. If you want to find it on the map of Central America today, look for Mexico City. That's the site of an ancient Aztec capital. It even got its name from the ancient nation, because Mexica was an alternate name for the Aztecs. They constructed the city on small artificial islands. It was slightly bigger than the surface area of London Heathrow Airport. The Mayas didn't have a capital city as we know it today. Their civilization spanned across 40 cities. These settlements had a population of 5 to 50,000 inhabitants. Today, these sites could be classified in terms of size as small American towns. But the total number of Mayan cities is not final. Archaeologists keep discovering new ones deep in the jungle of the Yucatan Peninsula. Quite recently, researchers unearthed a new site in the southeast of Mexico. They found a number of stone columns and named the city after the Mayan word for it. Back in the day, the city was part of the central Maya lowlands. Today, this region is covered with thick jungle. The Maya abandoned their settlements in this area around the 8th and the 9th century. Historians still cannot agree on why this happened. Some claim overpopulation was the main issue. Others argue the trade routes collapsed, so Mayan cities couldn't flourish anymore. Whatever the case, northern Mayan cities lived on. The descendants of these peoples were there when the Europeans stumbled upon them several centuries later. The Aztecs were also present in today's Mexico at this time, but contact with a foreign culture didn't bring them much good. There was an outbreak of smallpox that sealed the Aztecs' fate. This doesn't mean that this American nation left the world stage forever, though. Every time we say words like avocado, chili, guacamole, chocolate, and coyote, we are actually reviving the Aztec language. These words are present in pretty much every language on the planet. Mayan words also entered modern English. Linguists argue that the word shark actually comes from a Mayan language. This is the word these ancient Mesoamerican people used for fish. Both ancient civilizations left behind pyramids, and they look very similar in style. The only hint that can help you differentiate between them is that there are way more Mayan ruins that still exist today. Finally, regarding maize, or corn as we call it, there's a story among the Maya descendants that their process of harvesting corn back then was called amazing. Get it? Maize? Corn? Okay, I made that up. You're not surprised, are you?
Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, Geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
Now here's something. Baltic amber is one of the most common resins found in the world. The reason for this is that due to the vast forests of pine, their numerous deposits are so common they provide wonderful treasures from long ago. Ants are especially common in the Baltic amber, which comes from pine trees. Its resin is rich in sugar, so the ants often live amongst the trees, close to the easy source of food. One block found in East Germany has preserved one ant that is estimated to be about 48 million years old. Think of the birthday cake. But what makes this find interesting is another animal inside the amber. It's a mite, notorious hunters in the insect world, capable of traveling at great speed. These guys quickly latch onto their hosts, sucking them dry. They're also capable of destroying entire hives in one go. And within this piece of amber, the amber provides a display of their final struggle. In Southeast Asia, feathers belonging to something unique have been found from 80 million years ago. They were captured in resin during the Cretaceous period, a peak time for dinosaurs. The many feathers inside are from the Coelurosaur. It looks like a dinosaur, but this animal is more related to birds. Other feathers like this have been found in resin. They belong to avian and other non-flying dinosaurs. The discoveries have helped reimagine what dinosaurs actually look like. Still, dinosaurs may have had feathers instead of being completely bald. Of course, for most of them, the feathers weren't used for flying, but they helped the dinos stay warm. However, the feathers weren't all that was found, and a part of the Coelurosaur's tail is also preserved. Still, it's so small and ancient that its DNA hasn't survived to map their entire genome. The enclosed tail is also very delicate, and it can't be removed from its protective amber shell. But although these findings can only be observed, they've still provided a great insight in the evolution of birds. But how does amber preserve things so effectively, even at the initial stages? The trees produce the resin to protect any small gaps in the bark against feeding insects. Its antiseptic nature and lack of water content ensures it doesn't degrade for a long time. This also makes it more resilient as it petrifies over long periods, eventually becoming a fossil. Some of the oldest amber ever found was from the Triassic period, showing how long it can last. The pieces from Italy are about 230 million years old. And inside one of these ancient droplets holds the oldest arthropod ever recorded. This mite found inside has provided a broader understanding to their evolution. Today, they're known to mainly annoy gardeners by feeding on the petals of flowering plants. However, at the time the mite was caught, flowers didn't have any petals, and it would be without this tasty meal for another 100 million years. Now, 100 million years ago, Myanmar was part of Gondwana, the great supercontinent. At that time, Myanmar wasn't part of Asia yet. But it was still lush with a great forest, which contained many species of lizards that lived amongst the undergrowth, hiding away from dinosaurs. Many of them have been stored within amber. This fact helped discover ancestors of geckos and chameleons. By using CT scans, scientists have analyzed them, providing a glimpse into the formation of their scales, teeth, feet, and claws. It also provided an understanding of how these archaic creatures once appeared. Although mostly pieces of lizards, by using modern technology, the scientists have been able to create 3D images of the lizard. These images can reveal how those guys appeared in their full form. The images show that they still retain some of their exact features to this day, like the chameleon's sticky pads used for climbing. A salamander fossil from around 20 million years ago is one of the most intact specimens ever found in amber. Details of its final moments show that it had been attacked before getting stuck in the resin. However, what's confusing about this find from the Miocene era is that the amber was found in the Caribbean, but it came from a tree that's closer related to those from East Africa. The lizard also has ancestry from the same area. Finds like this have opened a whole new understanding about how these small lizards migrated. It's expected that they would have ridden fallen logs, which took them across the seas to new homelands, not only to the Caribbean, but to all continents except for Antarctica. Nobody goes there, it's too cold. In the Dominican Republic, you can find some of the rarest of all ambers. This Dominican amber came from neotropical forests from around 20 million years ago. Many of the trees that made the resin are now extinct. The amber is almost completely see-through and can come in an array of beautiful colors. The most common colors are red, yellow, and even blue, and are easily mistaken for gemstones. One was found with a flea caught in it, dating to when the forest was at its peak and the mammalian variety thrived. Fleas were likely common at the time, and this flea in particular had recently fed on a mammal before getting stuck. However, something more intriguing was found within the flea. While scientists checked what mammal DNA was within the flea, they found that it was carrying an ancient bacterial blight. These blights have been constant throughout Earth's history, dramatically decreasing populations of animals and plants. This now extinct blight in the amber helped scientists determine how much the bacteria have evolved and how it spread. Now, most remnants of insects inside amber aren't much more than the exoskeleton bodies. But with some found in Myanmar, they were so well preserved that even the color of the insects is still intact. Colors in nature appear in three different ways. The first is bioluminescence, that's produced by a chemical reaction within a living organism. The second is about pigments, where the color appears in an animal or plant tissue. The third is called structural coloration, and the production of colors here is explained by microscopic surfaces fine enough to react with the light. The rare insects in amber were found in the form of structural coloration, but only at specific wavelengths. It all explains the very intense colors rarely found. 99 million years later, these bugs can still show their vibrant colors – blue, purple, and green. Some of them appear so different in color and shape that they almost look like they're from another world. Which of course they are, a very old one. Ants have been around for about 168 million years, based on fossil evidence provided. They're well known for their social hierarchies and their hive mind system. They've dominated almost every corner of the insect world, but when these social capabilities came about have been difficult to determine. Yet, recently, amber dated from 100 million years ago has shed some light into their evolution. Several amber pieces have preserved various ant types, including the worker ants, guardian or soldier ants, and even a queen ant. Before these pieces were found, it was estimated their social nature occurred millions of years later. A piece of amber dated 100 million years ago helped shed light on the evolution of birds. A perfectly preserved bird that hatched preserved in amber was already equipped with its flight feathers. With the earlier physical abilities, they would be capable of moving around the nest by themselves at a very young age, and it's expected they could search for their own food almost immediately. But as birds continue to evolve and spend more time in the skies, their brain developed larger for their cognitive abilities. After hatching, their early development was then more focused on the brain, and the chicks slowly became more reliant on their parents over time. In Spain, a massive treasure trove of amber and other fossils has been found. Inside, there were remnants of an entire ecosystem that existed 110 million years ago. A bunch of individual fossils were found. The vast collection includes many types of insects, mollusks, arachnids, plants, 50 different dinosaur bone fragments, feathers, and hair from mammals, and a McDonald's burger wrapper. Nah, just kidding. With the abundance of findings, it's helped researchers understand the ancient terrestrial ecosystem that once existed. With loads of specific details of the environment, they've reconstructed the swamp. This way, it's now possible to experience what it was like in the world of dinosaurs.
We've all been afraid of the dark at some point in our lives, haven't we? I mean, do you remember getting tucked into bed by your mom or dad after they read you some scary fairy tale with monsters and dragons, or even dinosaurs? But just as your parents were about to turn the lights off and silently step out of your room, you remembered. What if there was something hiding under your bed? Or worse, what if some spooky creature was stuck somewhere in the closet? You could probably get up and check, but it was too dark out there. Wouldn't it be great to have some source of light that would come from within your body? You could always use it whenever you get surrounded by darkness. Unfortunately, as humans, we aren't able to do that. But there are a bunch of creatures out there that can, in fact, light themselves up. That's thanks to a little something scientists call bioluminescence. Animals and fish living in the ocean tend to have this talent more often than others. And you can find these creatures anywhere, close to the surface or deep down at the bottom. 2.5 miles deep if you have a knack for numbers. These creatures use their light for a lot of things, like communicating with other members of their species, luring in prey, and even scaring away enemies. Bioluminescence is basically an organism's ability to emit its own light. Chemistry has a lot to do with it. Such animals use two chemicals, one called luciferin and the other called luciferase. Add a bit of oxygen and bam! Light! Should you ever wonder if you actually observe bioluminescence or if someone just dropped a glow stick in the ocean, be on the lookout for neon blue, green, or even red sparkles in the sea. They're usually spread over a large area. This can even make the water look like glitter or a starry sky. You can thank squid, tiny crustaceans, and algae for this romantic atmosphere. Now, I've got another unusual phenomenon for you. How about a golden waterfall? I'm not kidding, it actually exists, and it's a natural phenomenon. To see it, you have to drive to Yosemite National Park to the Horsetail Fall. Make sure to plan your trip in winter or early spring. That's the only time during the year when you can see this awesome phenomenon. It doesn't need any scientific explanation. It's nothing more than sunlight at dusk hitting the waterfall in such a unique way that it makes it look like a river of lava. Or gold, your choice. That's the reason why during this time of year, the Horsetail Fall is also named the Fire Fall. Unfortunately, this phenomenon is becoming less and less visible within the years, mostly because of drought and other issues connecting with the melting of snow. So, should you ever decide to visit, keep an eye on the waterfall since the effect is very brief. Ever heard of a dirty thunderstorm? It's also called volcanic lightning. Apparently, specialists looking into the phenomenon have yet to fully grasp what it is. When a regular thunderstorm happens, particles with positive and negative charges collide, hence the giant spark we call lightning. It also makes a lot of noise, which you can recognize as thunder. But when a volcano is erupting, some of the volcanic ash particles get electrically charged, and while getting projected into the air with a huge force, they collide and cause electrical discharges. This whole process makes it look like there's lightning coming from the volcano itself. Imagine all that ash, gas, and smoke coming from the crater, and then add some electricity to the mix. It'll make the whole picture look really bizarre. No wonder this phenomenon is called the dirty thunderstorm. Now, how about clouds that look like waves? Those are called asperitas clouds, and they're actually quite close to the ground, unlike your regular day-to-day clouds. The name comes from the word aspero, which in Latin translates to rough or uneven. On rare occasion, you may spot such clouds when the weather is calm, but they're mostly associated with thunderstorms. These clouds appear during unstable atmospheric conditions, and surprisingly, they don't produce rain. Even though they do resemble dark storm-like clouds, they also create random patterns, tricking your eyes into thinking you're looking at the surface of the sea from under the water. Another impressive kind of cloud is called mammatus clouds. What makes them so special is a series of bulges emerging from the base of each cloud. One such cloud enters a level in the atmosphere where the wind direction changes. You can see these wave-like patterns in the sky. Australia is the place for you if you like surfing, but not all the waves you can catch there are made of water. Near a town called Hyden, there's a mysterious wave made out of rocks. This granite formation supposedly dates back to 2.63 billion years ago. That's way before dinosaurs started hanging around the planet. Standing at 49 feet high and 360 feet long, the wave was formed as a result of two processes: weathering and erosion. There's softer sediment at the base of the wave rock, which was chemically weathered by groundwater. winds and rain did the rest of the job, causing the erosion of the rest of the formation. Its red, yellow, and gray stripes are made of iron hydroxide, carbonates, and other chemical compounds that were washed down by the rain. You've made it to Australia, so stick around a bit more. There's one more location here that seems unreal. You'll need to fly over this one, however, if you want the best picture. In the western part of the country, surrounded by green woodlands, there's a series of lakes. They're all a staggering shade of bright pink. Out of them all, the most famous is Lake Hillier, a 2,000-foot-long reservoir. It's surrounded by both sand and a forest of eucalyptus trees. This makes the cartoon-like hue of the lake stand out even more. One of the many theories explaining the color of these mysterious lakes is connected with algae. These algae appear to gather high levels of a substance called beta-carotene, which has a red-orange pigment in it. Another explanation involves haloarchaea. Those are microorganisms that sometimes look red. Even if you don't enjoy flying, the lakes are great for taking a swim. They're not toxic, even though they have loads of salt in them. This means you'll be able to stay afloat easily, and the water won't damage your swimsuit. During winter up north in Canada, a bizarre phenomenon happens at Lake Abraham in Alberta. Underneath the frozen surface, you can spot some weird objects that look like frozen jellyfish. It's definitely not the case, as these creepy formations are just frozen methane bubbles. Those are pockets of gas that were trapped underwater and got stuck there after the lake had frozen. They appear when leaves and grass fall into the water and bacteria digest them. This process transforms them into methane. This phenomenon is as beautiful and strange as it is dangerous. The pockets of methane can easily become highly flammable. When the temperatures rise during the spring, the ice melts and these bubbles start popping and fizzing. It's a spectacular sight to observe. Picture a lake filled with soda. Remember not to bring any source of fire. It can be very dangerous for visitors. You can check out these types of lakes all across Canada's Banff National Park. Nature often tends to make its own music. Just listen to the sound of crickets at night, or the soothing noise of a waterfall. But in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, there's a strange geological phenomenon which takes nature soundtracks to a completely different level. These are called the ringing rocks, and scientists still can't explain their unusual behavior. If you strike these rocks with a heavy object, like a hammer or another rock, the stones will make a ringing sound, as if they were hollow, but they're not. What makes the ringing rocks even more bizarre, apart from the mysterious sound they make, is that no animal wants to hang around there. Even though the rocks are surrounded by a thick forest, scientists haven't managed to trace any animal activity in the area yet. Even more striking is the fact that despite all the trees around the rocks, you won't find any leaves lying on the boulders. What makes these rocks so unappealing for both animals and vegetation is still up for debate.
It's nighttime, and you're about to walk inside Pharaoh Tutankhamun's final resting place. You know, King Tut. You don't have a torch, but at least you came with a flashlight. You walk down several flights of stairs and observe how the walls are carved in hieroglyphics and what looks like a spell. Those who take anything from this place will be doomed for life, the spell says. Even if you don't really believe it, this scares you a little bit. You find a huge stone door. Is it a trap? You manage to open it, but oh no, it's only an empty chamber. You check your map. It seems like you're heading in the right direction. After what feels like hours, you realize you must be trapped inside a labyrinth. You try to retrace your steps, but you can't find the door where you came in from anymore. That's it, you think to yourself. You've fallen for the Pharaoh's trap. What's worse, you didn't bring a lunch. Okay, so we've all seen Hollywood movies where the main character is exploring ancient ruins and faces some seriously dangerous traps, right? We've been told Egyptian royalty protected their final resting places with venomous scorpions and snakes, sliding doors that will trap you for life, and giant rolling boulders that will crush anyone on their paths. The thing is, were these traps truly real? Well, I regret to be the one to break it to you, but this is all fiction. These elaborate traps were too technologically advanced for ancient civilizations to pull off. That is not to say, however, that there weren't any traps at all. Ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians and the Mayans, are known for their practice of building entire monuments dedicated to the ones who had passed away. These structures would often reflect the position of person occupied in society. So, for the really important people, the VIPs of their times, massive monuments were built to host their bodies long after they were gone. Some of these civilizations believed that a person's life would continue on the other side of the veil. For that reason, a person would be buried together with the belongings of their current life. If they had a lot of money and power and stuff, that meant their resting places would be filled with riches and gold. Now imagine if you lived in ancient Egypt and you knew exactly where all the pharaohs' tombs were located and had heard rumors of the amount of wealth kept in these places. Maybe you would be tempted to go check it out, right? We're talking about large rooms filled from floor to ceiling with golden artifacts, jewels, and even money. I mean, it does sound tempting. And since there weren't any security guards protecting the entrance of these places, Egyptians needed to get creative as to how they would protect these riches. These old civilizations found some traps to be useful. A recurring one was building empty rooms inside the monument to confuse a burglar. Now, let's take a look at Amenhotep III's final resting place as an example. It was built in the city of Luxor, in a spot also known as the Western Valley of the Kings. Two French engineers originally discovered the monument between 1905 and 1914 CE. The structure is huge and has more than 10 chambers, connected by long corridors and steep stairways. The King's Chamber is the most hidden one, and for an outsider to try and find it, they will probably enter a lot of empty rooms beforehand. Other pharaohs tried to protect their riches by commissioning monuments with false doors concealing pits that were up to 20 feet deep. This way, an unwarned and unwanted visitor would be surprised by the deep hole on their way to the king's resting chamber. Alongside false doors, pharaohs made sure to build labyrinth-style corridors and false walls. This way, robbers could take hours or days before they found the king's real chamber. As to pits with poisonous snakes on them, if there were any reptiles inside these monuments, they probably got inside on their own and would most likely not stay there for long. There is no way snakes would survive years and years without food inside these pits. So yes, another Hollywood-induced belief right there. If these traps seem boring to you, archaeologists did find an interesting deterrent in the final resting place of the Red Queen of Palenque in Mexico. Palenque was one of the most powerful Mayan cities in pre-Columbian Mexico, and the Red Queen was believed to be the grandmother of the last Mayan king, undoubtedly a person of immense importance to the empire. In her honor, a huge monument was built to keep her body after her passing. The discovery of the tomb itself was already thrilling. Archaeologists found an ancient monument when digging at the site back in 1994. The first thing they found was a room with a hidden door. Once they opened the door, they discovered a long corridor. Finally, at the end of this corridor was the Queen's chamber. The team of archaeologists was beyond excited to unearth this chamber with the mummy of the Queen herself still inside it. They found her to be accompanied by her pearls, jade shells, and expensive rocks. But as the team explored the remains, they saw something rather strange. The room was filled with a red-colored powder. Researchers knew that the color red was important to the Mayan people, and that much of their clothing and buildings were decorated with this color. But they didn't understand why the queen was buried with this unknown red substance. After they took a sample back with them for further analysis, they discovered that the red powder was cinnabar, a very dangerous mineral. This powder, when inhaled, can cause, shall we say, severe health damage to a person. The team concluded that this could only be a trap for anyone trying to steal her riches. Okay, so dangerous powders might have worked as the most intense traps we've seen until now. But perhaps the cheapest way to keep out unwanted visitors was to advertise spells written out all over the monument. We'd probably laugh at these today, but back in the day, they were more or less effective. Spells usually said that the person who took anything from that place would meet a tragic fate. Some spells said that robbers would lose their houses in big fires or terrible floods. Other spells said burglars would have incurable and undiagnosed health issues, but they weren't really enough to stop people from taking any gold. There are some stories surrounding how these spells might have been real. One of them is from the famous British Egyptologist Howard Carter, the one responsible for unearthing Pharaoh Tutankhamun's resting place in the 1920s. After months of unsuccessful digging, Carter discovered the tomb's existence by chance. He found the entrance to a stairway right beneath the soil where he had been searching all those months. With the help of a team, he cleared the piles of sand blocking the stairs and discovered a doorway. The door had several royal symbols carved into it, and Carter knew this could only mean a very important person had been buried there. And he was right. With a chisel, he made a hole in the top left-hand corner of the doorway and lit his vision with the help of a candle. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, the reflection of several golden and jeweled items crowding the chamber before him. Lost for 3,000 years, Carter had just discovered the final resting place of King Tut. But the story didn't finish here. This discovery was accompanied by a series of unfortunate events that led people to believe it had something to do with the pharaoh's spell. Carter himself mysteriously passed away just a few years later, and some of his assistants lost their houses in floods, just like one of the spells threatened. Some say it's just coincidental, as there's no real proof of these things being connected. Well, what do you think? Was this an effective trap after all? A comfortable abode with a gorgeous view of the Mediterranean Sea will serve as a perfect rain shelter. Well, this is what a real estate advertisement might have looked like for Neanderthals 100,000 years ago. Welcome to the weird and wonderful caves you could live in, or not. Of course, back then, neither real estate and advertising had been invented yet. Never mind the fact that Neanderthals couldn't build houses and often lived in caves. Yet, one of those caves looks an awful lot like a residential building. It's situated inside a high limestone cape called the Rock of Gibraltar. If the Neanderthals had had an economy, the caves inside this rock would have cost a bundle. Navigators discovered it in 1907. They just spotted a big hole inside the fortified rock. For many years, scientists have studied this place and found some traces of Neanderthals. They discovered ancient tools in the cave and bones of old animals. But the coolest thing was, they found 4 caves inside the rock. It was like a residential complex. Neanderthals lived alongside neighbors and helped each other hunt and fish. They created feather decorations and painted abstract drawings on the walls. Imagine our ancient predecessors hanging out in these caves 100,000 years ago. And now, scientists hang out there and study the primeval past of Neanderthals in detail. At the end of 2021, archaeologists uncovered a gap inside one of the caves leading to an unknown tunnel. They crawled through this hole and opened a new space under the cave roof. This place has been closed off from the outside world for over 40,000 years. And it seems it was one of the most prestigious apartments in the entire mountain complex. It has high ceilings with ancient stalactites. The ruined stone curtains divided the apartment into several rooms. Scientists also found the remains of ancient animals and scratches on the walls. It seems that Neanderthals had never lived here, but they used to visit this place. Archaeologists found the shell of a sea snail called dog whelk. One of the Neanderthals brought it here for some reason, but the primary owners of this place were hyenas. These caves show that Neanderthals were closer to humans than to monkeys. They had a way of life and even some customs. There's still a lot of work ahead, and scientists hope to find new rooms inside this rock. Meanwhile, in 2003, archaeologists discovered another early dwelling on the Isle of Flores in Indonesia. Among the green jungle, they found a cave with ancient tools. At first, everyone thought the human ancestors lived here, but then scientists discovered an unusual skeleton of an adult. A thorough analysis showed the skeleton belonged to a 30-year-old woman, 3.5 feet tall, just above the waist of an average adult. The woman's weight was equal to the weight of an adult shepherd. The skeleton didn't belong to Neanderthals or Australopithecines. It was a new unknown species, which scientists called Homo floresiensis, or simply the Hobbit. Also, there were remains of unusual ancient animals in the cave. It was an elephant the size of a cow, some large storks, and giant rats. Archaeologists have found out that hobbits were not the owners of this place. The main inhabitants were the rats the size of a cat. Maybe they were fighting the hobbits. Some analysis shows that Homo floresiensis wasn't our direct ancestor. They were in a separate branch of evolution. The hobbit skeleton looks more like that of a monkey than of modern humans. In 2009, in the dense jungle of Vietnam, archaeologists discovered Son Doan, the largest cave in the world. If you go inside the cave and shout, you'll hear your echo a long time. In some places, the height of this cave reaches half the height of the Empire State Building, and the total area is larger than one central block of New York. Son Doan is one of the 3 caves in the Vietnamese jungle. Many intricate mazes connect these caves. Inside, you can find unique plants and trees that live separately from the outside world. It's a real underground jungle. In some places, you can find collapsed ceilings that let the sunlight in. Besides unusual trees and plants, ancient stalactites hang there. Some limestone deposits are more than 450 million years old. They were here even before dinosaurs appeared. There are also many rivers in the cave. Rainwater coming down from holes in the ceiling has formed them. Fast streams resemble slides in a water park. They lead to unknown underground labyrinths. Scientists have studied only a small part of all these caves. The next unusual cave is in New Zealand. Hundreds of thousands of fireflies live inside. Each of them glows with a blue light. Together, they light up the cave. It may seem to you that you're on another planet, but you can't stay there for a long time. Special air measuring devices are everywhere. Scientists monitor the level of carbon dioxide necessary for the normal existence of fireflies. These insects are sensitive to the environment. If there are many people in the cave, or they stay there too long, the park staff will ask them to leave the place. It's like you're literally stealing oxygen from the fireflies. We've seen some pretty amazing caves so far, but how about a scary one? We're going to the desert of Yemen's Al Mara province. What we're looking for is not a cave, it's just a black hole in the ground, right in the middle of the desert. It's big, the size of a basketball court. It's not its size that could scare you, but what's inside. Scientists are still not sure what it is. From the depths of this black abyss, a disgusting smell of rotten eggs constantly comes out, and sometimes you can hear some strange, frightening sounds. The blackness of the giant hole in Yemen absorbs all the sun's rays, so you won't see what's there even with a powerful flashlight. People flew over this place by helicopter. They filmed using drones and the most powerful lenses, but they didn't catch anything except darkness. It looks like a big ink spot in the middle of golden sand. The locals are afraid to approach this place. They believe the cave leads to another dimension where evil creatures live. At the moment, the giant hole in Yemen is one of the most poorly studied and mysterious phenomenon of nature. How did it appear? How old is it? Where does it lead? Scientists are trying to find the answers to these questions. There are theories that the hole appeared because of construction work. Geologists drilled the soil nearby in search of minerals. It could have caused fluctuations in the Earth's crust and collapsed the surface. But no one can prove this theory, yet. And now, imagine a place where sunlight has not penetrated for more than 5 million years. There's little oxygen, and it's cold and damp. Still, life is born in this place, not only microbes and bacteria, but also something bigger. The living conditions in this cave are very different from the usual ones, so, in a sense, this cave is like another planet. It's the Movil Cave in the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. The entrance is a small hole in the ground. Inside, a tunnel leads deep below the surface. The levels of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide are above normal inside the cave. The air here is half as much oxygen as on the surface. People can't be here without an oxygen mask, but other creatures living here can. The cave is home to 48 species of living organisms. 33 of them are unknown. Here you can meet some unusual insects, white snails and white spiders, millipedes with huge whiskers, transparent shrimp, and unique species of leeches. They all live here thanks to the little bacteria autotrophs. They absorb carbon dioxide and release food particles. Bacteria feed on it. Other larger organisms feed on these bacteria, and some bigger organisms eat those little ones. In the end, everyone gets food. In this cave, evolution has created a biological system separate from the rest of the world.
Imagine you can spend an entire week digging in the ground, scanning for ruins, and taking photographs of the world's most surreal archaeological sites. Would you be up for it? Grab your magnifying glasses and let's do some digging. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Walk around the city stumbling upon ancient history, So you're strolling around Esquiline Hill on a sunny afternoon. You have just finished your third gelato when you suddenly see it. The magnificent Domus Aurea, or Golden House, for the non-Latin speakers. The Roman Emperor Nero ordered to build this huge palace back in 64 BCE. The construction finished in 68 BCE. In its glory days, it occupied an area 3 times the size of the Vatican City. The building had gold leaf decor, semi-precious stones, and tons of frescoes. There were over 300 rooms in the palace, some of them overlooking the beautiful vineyard and animal-filled woods nearby. It held an enormous 100-foot statue of Nero himself. The octagonal wall was the grandest construction in the complex. Originally, it was a banquet hall with waterfalls cascading down the back walls. The hall rotated around its axis day and night as petals fell from above. Nero's successors stripped the whole palace of its materials. Today, tourists can visit the main structure and, of course, the octagonal hall. They excavated it, and you'll easily recognize it even with its bare walls. After flying halfway across the world, we're deep in the Cambodian jungle. Good thing you brought bug spray with you. Mosquitoes can get crazy in this tropical climate. Hidden among the forest is the city of Angkor. It was the capital of the Khmer Empire from the 9th to 15th century. FYI, the word Angkor means capital city in the Khmer language. The city became one of the largest in the pre-industrial world. Researchers say nearly 1 million people used to live there. Today, Angkor attracts visitors from around the world because of its stunning architecture. You can recognize the Khmer style in the use of huge blocks of sandstone. At the center of the complex lies Bayon Temple. It's decorated with 216 smiling faces, which scientists say are meant to resemble the founder of the Angkor Empire. They believe the towers used to be decorated with gold, but today the site is a maze of vine-covered temples. The city was abandoned in 1431 and wasn't rediscovered until the 1840s. In 1992, they named it a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The United States is not usually synonymous with ruins, but here's one. In the mountainous state of Colorado lies the ancient home place of ancestral Pueblans. Throughout the Mesa Verde National Park, there are over 600 cliff dwellings built by the Pueblans around the 1190s. The Cliff Palace alone had over 150 rooms. It was a multi-story building of sandstone and mud mortar. To arrive at the balcony house, visitors had to climb a 32-foot ladder. There, you can see a mid-sized village of 38 rooms and 2 kivas. Kivas are traditional chambers built by Pueblans for ceremonial purposes. By 1300, the Pueblan occupation of the Mesa Verde ended. Thankfully, the site is open for visits now. If you like terracotta landscapes, you came to the right place. The city of Petra is a marvel of the ancient world. Located in Jordan's desert, the city was a commercial hub back in the 4th century BCE. The Nabateans, an Arab Bedouin tribe, lived in the so-called Rose City and thrived for many years, accumulating a significant amount of wealth. They invented an innovative water management system that made the region habitable. The rock-carved gate-like structure Petra is famous for is what is called the Pharaoh's Treasury. It stands at the main entrance to the site and is said to have a hidden treasure beneath it. In the early 2000s, the site was named one of the 7 new wonders of the world. All the way in South America, in the country of Guatemala, lie ancient Mayan ruins. The lost city of Tikal is a site made of 12,000 buildings, the remains of the capital of the ancient Mayan Empire. It is comparable in importance to London or New York. The North Acropolis is Tikal's most ancient complex of monuments. Built solely by human hands in 750 BCE, it served as the resting place of kings and chiefs. Back in the day, the step pyramid temples were painted a beautiful red. Mayans loved that color. Today, of course, you'll only see the limestone. Archaeologists have no clue as to the cause of Tikal's decline. Was it drought, disease, or something else altogether? Located on the left bank of the river Tigris is a strange old ruin, a battered archway. It belonged to a city named Ctesiphon, the jewel of the Persian Empire for over 800 years. The city hosted an extravagant palace, decorated with a glass mosaic, jewel-adorned carpets, and a lot of marble. What is it with royalty and marble anyway? The arch was part of an imperial palace complex. Until modern times, it was the largest man-made freestanding vault. Notice how there are no pillars sustaining it. The enormous wealth of the city made it a constant target for other empires, until it eventually fell. In the mood for some more Mayan ruins? Chichen Itza is an archaeological site with the best preserved pyramids on Earth. Located in Mexico's Yucatan state, this Mayan city is well over 1,500 years old. At its peak, it was home to 35,000 people. The site has a total of 26 ruins to be uncovered. The highlight here is El Castillo, a tremendous step-like temple standing 80 feet above the ground. Its most peculiar feature is that it has 91 steps up each of its 4 sides, including the upper platform. It makes for 365 steps, the number of days in the solar year. The oldest lost city in this list dates back to the Neolithic period. It was when us, human beings, started farming for the first time, instead of living a fully nomadic lifestyle based on hunting and gathering. Located on Orkney Island off the coast of Scotland is a prehistoric site known as Skara Brae. Thanks to good restoration, the site is very well preserved. You can see prehistoric dwellings with hearths, stone-built furniture, and even primitive toilets. Researchers found runic symbols on the site, which means they could have attempted some form of writing. Ah, Greece. Fancy some feta cheese, anyone? We've arrived at the focal point of archaeological sites, but today we're exploring one in particular, the Colossus of Rhodes. Also known as the Bronze Giant, it used to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, standing in the harbor of the Greek city of Rhodes back in the 3rd century BCE. The Colossus was said to be 105 feet tall. It's believed that the statue was built with the help of 900 camels. Sadly, it only stood for 54 years. A ravaging earthquake tore it to pieces, so visitors would come and see only a giant foot. Now, there is a whole load of nothing where the statue once stood. I think it's safe to say there are a lot of random ruins on walls spread across the globe. And our final visit for the day consists of exactly those. All the way in northern England lies the ruin of Hadrian's Wall. The Roman emperor commissioned the wall in order to separate his empire from Britain's. The original wall was a lot grander than what is left of it today. But still, the ruins are pretty impressive. They consist of a 73-mile structure stretching from one coast to the other. Back in the day, Hadrian's Wall hosted 17 large forts and numerous observation towers to ensure the maximum safety of his empire. The wall fell into oblivion when the Romans left Britain at the start of the 5th century. People began looting it to build churches, farms, and even houses. Today, if you decide to visit the ruins, you'll only see waist-high fragments of stone. But still, pretty neat, huh?
Imagine working 7 days a week on a large-scale construction site. You, along with thousands of others, carry millions of stone blocks and put them on top of each other according to a complex system. You work without modern construction equipment. You have no air conditioning or constant access to water. It's so hot outside that you can fry eggs on the road. You've been building the pyramid for decades, and now, when it's finally done, you enjoy the result of the colossal work of thousands of people. You're looking at a giant cultural monument of global value that will freeze in time and amaze people for tens of thousands of years. A few thousand years have passed. People in the 21st century see the pyramids and are like, wow, I can't believe humans have built this. Yeah, the people who built the pyramids wouldn't have appreciated such a theory. But actually, there are reasons to believe that people built it using some fantastic technology. From the outside, it seems the Great Pyramids are just big triangles of stone. People just put some heavy blocks on top of each other, and that's it. In fact, the design seems too perfect to be true. The pyramid consists of more than 2 million blocks. They lay so close to each other and are so even that you couldn't squeeze even a thin sheet of paper between them. Scientists still can't figure out the exact technology for building the Egyptian pyramids. One of the biggest and most famous is the Great Pyramid of Giza. This huge construction, well known all over the world, has one big secret. There should be a capstone on top of the pyramid. It's a triangular-shaped stone block, a small pyramid on top of a huge one. It's also called a pyramidion. The builders of ancient Egypt made it out of granite and limestone and covered it with gold. No records or old drawings prove that there was a pyramidion at the top of the Great Pyramid of Giza. But there's another ancient Egyptian structure with such a triangle, the Red Pyramid. It was built before the Great One, and its capstone has survived to this day. Archaeologists have found and reconstructed it. But where could the capstone of the Great Pyramid be? It's a mystery that still has no answer. Some are sure that some thieves have stolen it from the top. Maybe they just climbed up and pushed the pyramidion down. It makes perfect sense. The capstone was probably the most valuable element of the pyramid. Many scientists and archaeologists still don't know its exact purpose. Some believe that this peak covered with gold glorified the pharaohs. The capstone reflected moonlight at night and illuminated the entire space around it. During the day, the capstone reflected sunlight with its shiny surface. You could have noticed it from afar. The top of the pyramid was a kind of guiding star for lost travelers. All other stone blocks of the pyramid consist of limestone. People polished them to make them look shiny. In the past, they were even glowing and reflected light. You could see glowing pyramids from space, although they looked like tiny lights. Over thousands of years, winds, sandstorms, and rains have changed the pyramid's appearance. If people had taken care of them all this time, they would have looked like something out of science fiction movies, or the pyramids from Las Vegas. But unfortunately, we will never see their original appearance. Some archaeologists and scientists believe that the capstone could absorb the sun's energy and distribute it evenly throughout the pyramid. No one knows precisely why the Egyptians needed this technology. There's a theory the pyramids are ancient energy systems. The pharaohs applied this energy to use some unique technologies that were more advanced than all the achievements of the 21st century. And the triangular shape of the pyramids was ideal for boosting this electromagnetic energy. In theory, solar radiation, or electromagnetic forces, accumulated at the top of the pyramid, filled the inner rooms, and then went down the walls to the base. Any surface distortion could prevent the flow from spreading, so they had to create a perfectly smooth surface. That's why they installed the blocks so that nobody could squeeze a needle or razor blade between them. Many people believe in this theory because they built the pyramids from limestone. This material can hold energy inside itself. In the inner part, they created granite deposits to cause air ionization, that is, to create an electric charge. They also dug channels under the pyramid for water to transmit electricity. And at the top, they put a gold capstone, the best conductor of electricity. So, this is how you get a great power generator. Different cultures used similar technologies to create electricity all over the world. But these are all theories. If it had been working, humanity would have used these technologies today. There are mentions of the metal industry, chemistry, engineering, physics, mathematics, and astronomy in some ancient records. Most scientists don't believe in all these things. We know the detailed stages of the technology's development in different cultures. In the 21st century, scientists, historians, and anthropologists can track the evolution of all modern devices. If people had created some technological inventions in ancient times, the history of the world would have looked different. Perhaps all the achievements of antiquity could have been wiped off the face of the earth by global cataclysms. And it can happen to us. Just imagine how people would dig up a laptop in 5,000 years. Perhaps they wouldn't understand what kind of device it is. Another Egyptian wonder surrounded by mystery is the statue of the Sphinx. The Egyptians carved it out of a single massive piece of limestone about 4.5 thousand years ago. But scientists still don't know the exact date of its construction or who built it. People painted the Sphinx in different colors, so it looked much brighter and more vivid in the distant past. It was shining just like the Great Pyramids. Anyway, time hasn't only changed its appearance, but its name too. Initially, the Egyptians called it Hora-Mekhet. The Greeks renamed it the Sphinx about a few hundred years after it had been built. The Sphinx emphasized the greatness of the rulers of Egypt. It also performed a symbolic function of a watchdog guarding the tomb of the pharaoh and the paths leading to it. This version sounds realistic, since archaeologists have discovered many secret entrances at the foot of the Sphinx. Perhaps these rooms and intricate tunnels lead to underground halls with treasures. And treasures don't always mean gold and jewelry. According to legends and theories, the Sphinx guards the Hall of Records, the storage of all humankind's knowledge. The information about the ancient mythical state of Atlantis could be there. You can find many detailed maps of the internal dungeons of the Sphinx on the internet. They show structures 12 stories deep under the statue. It looks like a small city filled with gold, scrolls of knowledge, and various ancient artifacts. But don't believe all these maps. These are just theories. Several thousand years have passed, but people have very little information about it. Archaeologists know that there are still many strange and exciting things about the Sphinx that are still undiscovered. Some locals are afraid to research because they believe they can awaken something terrible from the underground depths. Therefore, it's mostly scientists from other countries who conduct the excavations. In 1998, scientists discovered strange tunnels leading to empty rooms under the Sphinx. They realized that some people tried to get there through tunnels in the past, and maybe those people took all the treasures that were there. One of the legends says that some powerful artifact lays beneath the Sphinx. Its technology can change the whole world, but the locals are hiding it because it can damage the planet. Some believe that you can find evidence of unknown technologies painted on the granite walls in the pharaoh's tombs. But most likely, these paintings and signs tell us the myths and legends of ancient Egypt. But what if Egyptian symbols and drawings are detailed instructions for using ancient technologies? What if the locals that lived at that time thought, People in the future won't be able to get energy themselves. Let's leave some detailed instructions for them. Anyway, there are many riddles and theories. In reality, the search for answers is a dangerous undertaking, since it's not easy to get into the underground halls. Excavations can ruin the structure of the entire Sphinx. Any person inside the tunnels may get lost and never be able to find their way back. Besides, it costs a lot of money. Now, what would be awesome is if people could invent some device that could scan underground areas and show their detailed models. The conditions on this mysterious island might teach us how we can live on Mars one day. Devon Island is, to this day, the largest uninhabited island on our planet. It's located in the Canadian Arctic archipelago, and it's easy to see why people find it impossible to make a home here. The soil stays frozen throughout the seasons. The eastern part of the island is covered by a thick ice cap all year round. Summers here last for less than 50 days, and by summer, I mean that the ground is snow-free and the temperatures are slightly over 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Since almost no plants are growing here, there are no animals that could have adapted to these conditions. That's why scientists compare this island to what it would be like to live on Mars. In 2001, a project started here on Devon Island looking to discover how people might live and work on other planets, particularly on Mars. It's called the Houghton Mars Project and offered NASA scientists some unique studying opportunities. There are few options here in terms of logistics and transportation, and communicating with people living outside the island is also a bit more difficult. Specialists believe that if we can find solutions to live here, we might be able to do it on Mars too. Think of it as a home-based outer space boot camp. The Pitcairn Islands can be found in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If you're a fan of adventures and remote places, this is the place to be. But you'll need to buckle up for quite the ride, since no plane has ever reached this place. The only way to reach the Pitcairn Islands is to take a 32-hour yacht ride. No wonder only 50 people are known to live here. Its history is really interesting too. A group of people settled here in the 18th century after a failed marine mission. To this day, all the residents of the island are descending from that initial group. Life's not easy here though. If they need to see a doctor, for example, they need to travel either to the island of Fiji or to New Zealand. Now let's head over to Mexico, where recent technology has allowed scientists to explore some fascinating cenotes, which were previously unknown. Cenotes are also called sinkholes and allow us to see subterranean water bodies. A team of archaeologists, cave divers, underwater photographers, and biologists came together to explore and document the extensive network of sinkholes located in the Yucatan Peninsula. One of the hotspots is located under the main pyramid at the Chichen Itza archaeological site. In total, scientists are looking to explore about 6,000 cenotes stretched across this whole region. The whole project is important not only because of the geological discoveries, but also because of its connection to the Mayan people and their culture. These recent discoveries revealed that for the Mayans, these cenotes weren't simple water sources. They dictated the way they built their constructions and had a huge impact on their spiritual lives too. The tallest mountain in the world is Mount Everest, sure, but it's been explored by scientists and tourists alike and doesn't hold many secrets. The mysterious Ganghar Puensem, on the other hand, is the tallest unclimbed mountain on our planet. The reason behind this unusual situation is not because of its remoteness or harsh conditions. Rather, because it's against local legislation to climb it. It's located in the South Asian territory of Bhutan, and the name of the mountain translates to the White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers. Local tradition dictates that mountain peaks shouldn't be available to humans and need to be left to the higher spirits. Mountains in this region can only be climbed up to 3.7 miles, but Ganghar Puensem tops 4.7 miles. For this reason, there's no official record of any human reaching the peak. Almost all of the previous expeditions have been inexplicably stopped at the midpoint. The next unusual spot should be on any travel enthusiast's bucket list, the island of Madagascar. For starters, it's estimated that about 90% of the species of plants and animals that are found here can't be seen anywhere in the world. But there's one small portion of the island that has baffled both tourists and scientists, the Stone Forest. It belongs to the Tsingy de Bemaraha National Park and features some unique limestone formations. They look like thousands of spiky towers that stretch hundreds of feet into the air. The distance between these formations can be anywhere from a few inches to the length of a city street. As beautiful as it is, it's really hard to get here. It'll take you a few days to get there from the nearest city. Once you get to the park, it becomes really difficult to explore, too. It can take a whole day to go across as little as half a mile. The word Tsingys itself translates to where one cannot walk barefoot. To visit the remotest village in the whole world, you'll need to prepare yourself for quite the journey. From the United States, for example, the easiest route involves a 15-hour flight to Cape Town, South Africa, followed by a 6-day boat ride to reach Tristan da Cunha. Or you could take a month-long cruise through the South Atlantic Ocean, whatever works better. Planning in advance is a must, since only 9 boat visits are made to the island yearly. It's just 7 miles long and right in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, stretching a mere 37.8 square miles. There are slightly over 200 residents, and they all farm for a living. They do have internet service, but it's really slow. The people living here speak a dialect of English that is used by the fewest number of people in the world. The town of Coober Pedy in Australia is partially underground. It all began back in 1915, when opal deposits were found in the area. To this day, the town is still the biggest opal mine in the world. People living here figured out that it would be more comfortable for them to stick to the underground, as temperatures above ground can reach 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So, the establishment now has underground stores and galleries. Coober Pedy is also home to the world's first 4-star underground hotel. North Sentinel Island, located near India, is another pretty remote place. Not because of the time it takes to get there or the climate, but because it's home to the world's most mysterious tribe. The population living here is estimated to be between 50 to 400 people and isn't known to have any contact with the outer world. This is mostly because locals don't really enjoy visitors and tend to scare them away, even harming tourists. So, to protect them and their obvious wishes, the island is monitored by the local Indian authorities. It's believed the tribe's people don't have any immunity from modern diseases, so being in contact with foreign people might actually be fatal for the locals. On these French islands, there are no native inhabitants. The Kerguelen Islands are part of the Antarctic lands and are home to just scientists that visit on rotation. At any given time of the year, there are no more than 100 people here, and they're mostly engineers and researchers. There's no plane to get you to these islands, and few tourists are known to have visited them. The island is covered in glaciers, and the soil here isn't friendly to plants or animals. But if you're curious about what this place looks like, you'll need both the money and the time to complete the trip. You can only reach the island by ship, which reaches the shores of Kerguelen only 4 times a year. It isn't cheap to stay in these islands, and you definitely won't find 5-star hotels here. The trip departs from Réunion, and it takes about 28 days to reach the first island. Half of the time will be spent at sea, so be prepared to cover over 5,600 miles of the Indian Ocean.
If someone finally invents time travel and you hop on a trip to the past, you won't recognize many of the things you know and love today. The Statue of Liberty and the Egyptian pyramids, some basic gadgets like the remote control and your laptop, and even the corn you have for lunch have all changed beyond recognition. When the pyramids were originally built in ancient Egypt and Giza and other places, they didn't look sandy brown at all. All of them were covered with white limestone. If you had seen them under the hot African sun, you'd have to look away. That's how smooth and shiny they were. Builders used around 6 million tons of this material for the Great Pyramid of Giza alone. It's the largest one you can still see on your trip to Egypt. The local rules were quite a thrifty crowd, and they reused some of the casing stones for other construction projects. A massive earthquake in the 14th century has also loosened some of the stones, so you won't see a lot of limestone, but some of it is still there, on top of the Pyramid of Khafre in Giza. It looks like it has a second peak on top of the first. In ancient times, all pyramids used to have capstones called pyramidions, covered in a mix of gold and silver. Most of them have been lost over the centuries, but you can still see a few of them at museums. They show images of Egyptian deities. The pyramids were probably modeled after a sacred pointed stone, the Benben. It represented the rays of the sun. Now, lifting heavy rocks wasn't so simple without the tech we have today. I guess you'll agree with me if you helped your friends move at least once, and they made you carry the couch. But those smart Egyptians of the past thought of that and chose the pyramid shape. It lets the weight distribute evenly throughout the whole thing. The Statue of Liberty has also had a major makeover since it was first unveiled in 1886. Believe it or not, it used to be a shiny brown color, just like a penny. 20 years later, it changed its color to green. It wasn't a fashion statement, but a chemical reaction. The statue is covered with hundreds of thin copper sheets. When copper reacts with air, it naturally forms a protective layer called verdigris. This layer protects what's under it from corrosion, and that's why statues and other things made of copper, brass, and bronze can last so long. When Lady Liberty first turned green, people in authority decided it would be a good idea to paint it all over. It was way before social media, so you couldn't just drop an angry comment under the post describing the idea. But they wrote about it in the local newspapers, and the public didn't love the idea. Then the Times interviewed a copper and bronze manufacturer, and he confirmed they shouldn't repaint it, because removing the protective layer would mean destroying the statue. Over the years, people have suggested painting Lady Liberty several times, but no one has ever done it. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine that lady in any other color, so I guess it's for the better. You love bananas as much as I do? Next time you enjoy a juicy soft one, remember you gotta thank selective breeding for that texture. The original wild bananas had many large, hard seeds and not so much delicious pulp. And hey, who doesn't like a sugary watermelon? It has a history of over 5,000 years, and it used to have bitter, yellowish white flesh and was really tricky to open. Selective breeding saved the day again, and watermelons got way sweeter. Japanese scientists went further and invented the seedless version. Corn's grandmother is a Mexican grass called teosinte. The kernels in this grass were small and hard to get. Farmers from many thousands of years ago saved the seeds only of those plants that were larger or tastier, or with kernels that were easier to grind. Thanks, my friends, for giving us the corn that's edible and even delicious. And just imagine, wild avocados were so small that they could easily fit in the palm of your hand. The pit in them was so large you wouldn't find much edible material inside. They also had a much harder shell than the ones we're used to. You probably wouldn't get a lot of work done without your beloved computer today, but I can't tell you exactly whom to thank for this invention. The ABC from 1942 is one of the contendants for the title of the first computer. It's short for the Atanasoff Berry computer, named after its inventors at Iowa State University. The ABC weighed over 700 pounds. Yep, yours must be way lighter than that. That big boy consisted of around 300 vacuum tubes and had a rotating drum, a little bigger than a paint can, and had small capacitors on it. A capacitor is a gadget that can store an electric charge, like a battery. The ABC could solve problems with up to 29 different variables to help scientists save some time. Like modern computers, it used binary digits, ones and zeros, to represent all numbers and data. Because of that, it was possible to do the calculations electronically. And now, my favorite part, the ABC finished one operation about every 15 seconds. Just for you to compare, it's millions of operations per second now. Unlike the tech we use today, the ABC did not have a changeable stored program, so the program could only do a single task at a time. An operator had to write down the intermediate answer and then dial that back into the computer. Sounds like another reason to be happy we live in the 21st century. That remote control you use for all sorts of appliances has gone a long way too. Nikola Tesla, who gave us alternating current, designed one of the first wireless remote controls back in 1898. He named his invention teleautomation and demonstrated it on a miniature boat controlled by radio waves. The boat had a little metal antenna attached to it. Tesla sent signals to the boat using a box with a lever and a telegraph key, which was his version of a remote control. Those signals set electrical contacts on the boat into motion and moved the rudder and the propeller, and Tesla was controlling the boat. The concept of the remote control soon spread to other gadgets. The first television remote control followed in 1950. It was designed by the Zenith Radio Corporation called LazyBone. Don't take it personally, please. This LazyBone had a massive cable that was attached to the TV set, and those who tried it didn't fall in love with the invention because they tripped over that cord. I feel your pain, my friends. If you live or work on one of the top floors, you gotta love this one. Meet the first passenger elevator. It traveled at the speed of 40 feet per minute. Not the fastest, I know, compared to today's record, which is 40 feet per second. But hey, it was built back in 1857 in New York and was more of a tourist attraction than a necessity. The elevator had a steam engine hidden in the basement of a 5-story building. 3 years later, they shut it down because the public didn't appreciate it. Otis Tufts filed the first patent for a vertical railway around the same time. His invention included an actual car with a bench inside for people to sit on. Sounds like a great spot to hang out with friends to me. What do you say? Then they started adding elevators to luxurious hotels around the world. They were entire rooms with a rich design, upholstered seats and mirrors on the walls, and sometimes even a small chandelier. There was an obligatory operator who'd close the door and the car would start its super slow ascent. It was still more about style than about speed, so I guess I'd choose the stairs.
So what comes to your mind when you hear the word Antarctica? Most likely, cold, snow, ice, and penguins. Yet, this is one of the least explored regions in the world that hides many strange and unique things. Check them out. You don't have to go to Antarctica to see this weird thing. All you need to do is open Google Earth and move to one of the southernmost islands of Antarctica, King George Island. Recently, internet users have noticed a large and pretty strange cave entrance there. Where does this wide, dark passage lead? People started making suggestions. It's the entrance to a secret base or some laboratory. This is the part of the spaceship that crashed there thousands of years ago. This is the door to the ancient city of Antarctica. Perhaps there's a giant rock mountain with an ancient cave beneath all this snow and ice. Well, there's some ideas. Users have calculated the approximate dimensions of this cave. It might be about 74 feet high and 250 feet wide. You could hide a Boeing passenger jet in there. Nature probably created this entrance. This is a logical explanation, but there are two strange factors. First, take a look at the foot of the mountain. It seems that there are steps there. They're dark in color, as if they're made of stone. And if you look closely, you can notice something similar to human footprints. Has anyone entered this cave? Or maybe someone is still living there now. The second oddity is the disappearance of the mysterious finding. For the first time, people noticed it in a Google Maps snap in 2007. Then the entrance disappeared. Then it reappeared a few years later. After that, it vanished. And in 2022, people saw it again. Perhaps old snow melts, a new layer falls, and then the wind blows it away and the cycle repeats. But the alleged steps leading deep into the cave make one doubt the natural origin of this tunnel. You can easily find the coordinates on the internet and visit the cave via Google Earth. You might see something there and tell the world. There's another strange thing people discovered with the help of Google Earth. In 2020, one user found a strange object that looked like a giant ship 100 miles off the coast of Antarctica. It was covered with ice and snow and lying on its side. It looked like a cruise ship. You could notice the windows, the deck, and the bridge. But not all people agreed with this. Some claimed it was a spaceship. Others said it was some kind of secret building. The user who first noticed the ship stated that its size was about 400 feet, which is the perfect length for a passenger vessel. But what is this ship doing in such a remote place in the middle of a glacier? How did it get here? Who was its captain? No one has found the answers to these questions yet. In 2016, people using Google Earth discovered a photo of an unknown sea monster floating off the coast of Antarctica. This creature resembled a giant squid with a length of about 200 feet. This is slightly shorter than 3 train cars. Just imagine this kraken swimming in Antarctica's dark, icy waters and dragging to the bottom everything it meets on its way. Maybe it's the great and terrible Chulu, or one of its offspring. You will quickly notice this blood-red waterfall among Antarctica's endless, dazzling white landscapes. Don't worry, it's not blood. For many centuries, the waterfall has been painting snow in a bright red color. The stream flows straight out of a white iceberg. Let's look inside and find out what's happening there. Millions of years ago, there was a small crystal-clear pond, but then a glacier formed around it. A thick layer of ice and snow blocks sunlight, heat, and oxygen access. For millennia, the reservoir remained in this cold vacuum. But at one point, the water made a hole in the icy wall and broke out. When this salty water comes into contact with oxygen, it immediately turns scarlet or rusty. Antarctica is the only place where you can find such a unique natural phenomenon. One of the driest places on Earth is located in Antarctica. It's one of the most lifeless deserts in the world, the McMurdo Dry Valleys. In this desert, you won't see the scorching sun, hot sand, and cacti. A desert means a place with a lack of precipitation and life. The McMurdo Dry Valleys meet these parameters. But this place is also unique for Antarctica, since you won't find glaciers there. Despite the frost, ice can't form in the desert because it hasn't rained for millions of years there. It also never snows. A strong wind coming from the mountains reaches speeds up to 200 miles per hour. It would be difficult for you to stay on your feet there. The wind is filled with moisture. It heats up and evaporates all the liquid and snow in the desert because of its high speed. Only dry air reaches the ground. But you can find several lakes there. They don't freeze, only thanks to the high concentration of salt. The water is so salty that large life forms can't develop there. But scientists have found microscopic organisms near the lakes. 20 million years ago, Antarctica was filled with swamps and trees and swarming with insects and animals. But now, it resembles the surface of Mars, literally. Scientists and astronauts are exploring such regions as the McMurdo Dry Valleys, since the natural conditions there are similar to those on the Red Planet. So, before you go to Mars, you can practice living in similar places on Earth. Also, scientists discovered an underwater world in the Antarctic filled with hundreds of amphipods, crustacean animals similar to shrimp. Wait a minute, it happened in the Antarctic? But the McMurdo Dry Valleys are located in Antarctica. Well, the words are very similar, but what is the difference? Oh, and don't forget the Arctic. The Antarctic is the region in the southernmost part of Earth that houses the continent of Antarctica, and the Arctic is another land altogether. They have the same natural conditions, frost, ice, and snow, but they're located in different parts of the planet. The Arctic is at the North Pole, Antarctica is at the South Pole. Now, back to the discovery. Scientists put forward theories that the ice of the Antarctic hides a vast network of freshwater rivers and lakes. And in 2022, they found a new ecosystem. Researchers explored the Antarctic Ross Ice Shelf and its underwater rivers. This is a massive piece of ice floating in the ocean. A team from New Zealand used a special drilling rig equipped with a hot water supply to drill a hole 1,640 feet deep. That's more than the height of the Empire State Building. Then, they lowered some video cameras and saw thousands of crustaceans swimming in different directions. So it seems they're very unorganized. In the waters of the Antarctic, you can also meet some of the scariest creatures on the planet. These are sea spiders. They got this name because they resemble land spiders, but they're actually a species of marine arthropods. And unlike land spiders, those in the ocean are much larger. They look like 8 strong legs without a body. One such spider can be a dinner plate in width. Some of them have no eyes and have proboscises instead of jaws. Sea spiders are poorly studied because they live in deep, cold waters. Antarctica hides many little-known animals. There are long tunnels in its glaciers leading to scary darkness. On this cold continent, people have found the remains of giant dinosaurs and other ancient creatures, such as the ancestors of modern ducks. Many underground rivers and lakes hide unexplored wildlife. Even the ice here can be weird. Take a look at these striped icebergs. They have blue, black, green, and turquoise shapes. The color depends on the conditions of the water during freezing. For example, green lines appear because of algae, blue ones form when the water freezes too quickly. Okay, I'm freezing. Time to go thaw somewhere warmer. Hawaii. Yeah.
Everyone loves a good landmark. The Roman Colosseum, the ancient city of Machu Picchu, the Giza pyramids. But have you ever wondered how it once looked? Way back in the days when they were built? Or even in the time they were covered in ivy and forgotten by humanity? Buckle up, because we're heading on a time travel adventure to the world's greatest archaeological sites. Our voyage begins in South America, deep inside the Peruvian mountains. Behold, the city of Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is a monument to the ingenuity and power of the Inca civilization. During its prime, the Inca civilization stretched 2,500 miles along South America's coastline from modern-day Ecuador all the way down to Chile. And Machu Picchu was located at the heart and center of it. The historic site was constructed at around 7,000 feet above sea level, more or less around 1450 BCE. The gated city consisted of around 150 buildings made of stone. The Incas managed to build temples, houses, and even a complex aqueduct system to irrigate the entire town. And yes, they did all that without the help of wheels or any instrument made of iron. The housing model is somewhat similar to stone houses we see nowadays, with the difference that the Incas didn't use any cement to stick together the blocks of stone. Yet, they fit seamlessly on top of each other. Not only that, the Incas must have developed a rudimentary yet effective anti-earthquake technology, since in the event of a quake, the rocks would shake without falling out of place. If Machu Picchu had been built today, it would have cost over $70 million to finish the entire thing. The purpose of the site is still a mystery to many historians. Theories suggest that it could have been built as a ceremonial site, a safety base for the Inca people, or even a retreat for royalty. What we know for a fact is that in the 16th century, 100 years after Machu Picchu was built, its population abandoned it, with tree roots taking over the majority of the site and keeping it hidden from humankind for over 4 centuries. It wasn't until the 20th century that the world was reintroduced to Machu Picchu when a Peruvian farmer led Yale University professor Hiram Bingham III to visit the site. Since then, Bingham and many other explorers dedicated their lives and research to studying the archaeological wonder of Machu Picchu. Now, for the next stop on our time-traveling vehicle, the city of Pompeii in Italy. Pompeii has crowded our collective imagination for many years. The eruption of the Mount Vesuvius volcano in 79 AD and the destruction of an entire city is hopefully not something that will happen again. But I bet you're wondering, what did Pompeii look like on its last day? It took 18 hours for Pompeii's streets, markets, houses, and forums to be buried under millions of tons of volcanic ash. Thanks to some clever scientists, we discovered that the lava and ashes that covered Pompeii on its very last day actually helped to freeze the city in time. Different from ice, the cloud of ashes did not preserve the city intact, but as the items disintegrated over 2,000 years, they left voids under the earth. Archaeologists found that if they filled these voids with plaster, the shape of the buried city would soon reveal itself. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, it was nothing like the bustling city of 12,000 people that had existed for many years before the fateful eruption. Pompeii was a vibrant and rich municipality. The site's ruins revealed that many areas of Pompeii boasted impressive houses, some with balconies, which was a sign of great wealth at the time. And, believe it or not, even some artwork survived the eruption. Archaeologists found well-preserved frescoes and murals of mythological creatures, all indicating that members of the high society lived there. Ruins show the city even had thermal baths and showers made with luxurious materials. Oh, and apparently, the people of Pompeii had amazing teeth. Yes, archaeologists could see even that tiny level of detail from the plaster molds they recovered from underground. Still in the Italian territory, we find one of the world's biggest tourist attractions, the Roman Colosseum. It was built as an amphitheater during the reign of Emperor Vespasian, around 70 AD. It wasn't until 80 AD that Vespasian's son, Emperor Titus, inaugurated the Colosseum. The monument was something to behold, with 157-foot-tall walls, over 80 entrances, and the capacity to host 87,000 people. All social classes and groups were welcome at the Colosseum, and this partly explains why it flourished for so many centuries. During the decline of the Roman Empire, around the 6th century AD, the Colosseum started being neglected and abandoned. The monument was looted, and some of its columns and stones were used to build infrastructure elsewhere. Only 1/3 of the original Colosseum still remains, and if it's big now, imagine what it once was. Greece was home to one of the world's largest empires. At the height of this empire, literally and historically speaking, more or less 2,400 years ago, the Greeks built a citadel known as the Acropolis. The Acropolis, which is composed of historical buildings, is considered to be one of the biggest landmarks of Western civilization to date. Tourists that visit the capital city of Athens today may be faced with yellowish and broken pillars of the Parthenon, standing way up high in one of the city's hills. But way back when it was built, between 447 and 432 BCE, the imposing and majestic Parthenon was purely white, as the entire monument was built with gleaming white marble. The statues inside were made of gold. The Parthenon is a 23,000 square foot temple held up by 69 marble columns. The largest blocks of marble are massive, weighing around 10 tons each. And the most surprising fact is that the marble didn't come from Athens, but from a nearby site that stood 10 miles from the Acropolis, known as Mount Pentelicon. Historians intrigued by where the primary material for building the Acropolis came from found tiny and big blocks of marble all scattered around the floor of Mount Pentelicon. There was also a paved road that the Greeks had built to carry the rocks around. But perhaps the most impacting monument of all times is located at the heart of the Middle East, outside the Egyptian city of Cairo. The pyramids are considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Giza Pyramid Complex was built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu around 4,500 years ago. Between 20 to 30,000 people took part in the construction process. It's composed of 3 pyramids. The massive monument is made out of approximately 8,000 tons of granite and over 550,000 tons of mortar, which gives it the appearance it has today. Would you believe me if I told you that the pyramids didn't always look like this? Far from it. They were shiny white with a golden triangular tip at the top. This is because the Egyptians used over 6 million tons of limestone to cover the entire rocky, step-like structure, all so that they could gleam white under the unforgiving sunlight of Egyptian skies. The Pyramid of Khufu remained the tallest structure on Earth made by humans for over 3,800 years. It was the only 8-sided pyramid in Egypt and was believed to align with Orion's belt. It's considered to be the most aligned construction facing north. In 1979, it was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Let's head on down to the Indian city of Agra to quickly visit the Taj Mahal. You may know it as the Taj, but it can also be called by its more endearing name, a teardrop in the cheek of time. The Taj took over 22 years to build and was commissioned in 1632 by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan as a declaration of love for his third and favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. It was made with ivory white marble, and amazingly, due to tight conservation, it still remains very similar to what it was when it was built. I think all this talk of landmarks got me thirsty for some traveling. What about you? Tell us in the comments below if you've ever visited some of these sites, or which interesting landmarks you'd add to this video.
Leave it to people wandering on Google Earth to stumble upon the world's newest and weirdest places ever. Like this mysterious pyramid discovered in Antarctica. Soon enough, the internet blew up with all sorts of theories regarding this unusual shape. Could it be a sign from a different life form? Is this pyramid indeed natural, or is it man-made? For starters, it's not the first time we've discovered a pyramid in the Antarctic. The first one was observed by the British Antarctic Expedition in the 1910s and kept secret for a long time. Its discovery being kept hidden only added to the mystery. A second such structure was discovered in 2016, which further increased the interest in the matter. The mystery was soon enough deciphered by scientists. These formations are just mountains. They're located near the Ellsworth Mountains, a range over 250 miles long, so they're just mountain peaks that have broken through the ice sheet. As for their particular shape, it's just a coincidence. Pyramids are found throughout nature. The Matterhorn in the Alps and Mount Ballenstinder in Iceland, for example, are quite similar in terms of shape. As for the official name of these peaks, they're called nunataks, or peaks of rock peeking through a glacier or an ice sheet. Antarctica has way more incredible features, like the fact that it's home of 60 to 90% of the world's fresh water. That's because its ice sheet is the biggest on our planet, stretching across 5.4 million square miles. I'll spare you the calculations, but that leaves only 1% of the continent ice-free. Antarctica's ice reaches 2.7 miles thick at its deepest point, meaning half the height of Mount Everest. Should it ever melt completely, our sea levels would rise to roughly 200 feet. It wasn't always this cold, though. At some point in our planet's history, Antarctica had some average temperatures as the city of Melbourne has today. It took a lot of research, but scientists figured out that Antarctica's temperatures could have reached up to 62.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Sure, that was 40 to 50 million years ago, but if you think about it, it was at the same time when dinosaurs roamed our Earth. Time is also different on this icy continent. All the lines of longitude that help us calculate different time zones merge into a single point at the South Pole. Here, there are 6 months of daylight in the summer, followed by 6 months of complete darkness during the colder season. So, scientists working here stay, on average, in the same time zone they've come from. The Blood Falls aren't a chapter of a thriller movie. They are merely a series of waterfalls located in one of the driest regions of Antarctica. They emerge from an underground lake filled with a special type of bacteria. These little organisms use sulfates as fuel instead of sugars, which makes them very intriguing for scientists. The water contained in this lake is so full of iron that it basically just rusts when it meets air. So, the reddish color of the waterfall also gives it its trademark name. The megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there are no megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably because the gigantic creature was adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. If you plan to visit Antarctica by boat someday, just know you might not get there on a non-metallic boat. The hull of your transportation device must be made of either steel or aluminum to withstand the harsh weather conditions here. Antarctica isn't home to a lot of bugs. In fact, there is only one true species of insect that calls this place home. It's a wingless midge called Belgica antarctica. This fly is so tiny that it only reaches 0.08 to 0.23 inches long, but it's still the Antarctic's largest terrestrial animal. A lot of Antarctic fish also come with an antifreeze substance in their blood. They don't necessarily need it for protection against the cold temperature, but mostly against touching ice. These antifreezes are made up of large glycoprotein molecules. They surround any small ice crystals that may form, making sure they don't spread through the animal's tissues, which could cause a lot of damage. They also create a sort of small pillow blocking the sharp ice crystals, so they're less likely to cause any pain. It also doesn't rain a lot here on this icy continent, but one amazing meteorological quirk of Antarctica is that it's full of diamond dust. This dust is basically small ice crystals that pop out of humid air close to the Earth's surface. Think of it like an icy fog. As they flow through the air and get touched by sunlight, they begin to sparkle, making visitors here feel like they're surrounded by diamonds. It's probably the last place you'd want to go into labor, but in 1978, the first person was born here ever. Emil Marco Palma was its name, and ever since, 10 other people have been born here in Antarctica. There's a lake on this icy continent that is so full of salt, it makes it impossible for it to freeze over, even if temperatures can go as low as 5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because pure water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Water that has salt in it, or any other substance for that matter, will freeze, but at a way lower temperature. That lower temperature is adjustable depending on the substance itself and the amount that has been placed into the water. Antarctica was the last official continent to be discovered. It remained completely unseen until the 1820s. But it took another 20 years to confirm it was actually a continent and not just a group of icy islands. Just because it's really cold here doesn't mean you can't go on a date here. One December night, an American scientist that was posted in Antarctica logged into a dating app simply out of curiosity. He was certain no other profiles would show up, but to his surprise, he found someone soon enough. Another researcher who was stationed just 45 minutes away, by helicopter of course. They eventually got together and went on the first date in Antarctica ever recorded. Apart from ice, this continent has something else way more abundantly than any other piece of land on Earth: meteorites. If we look at the research done by scientists, meteorites have equal chances of reaching any place on our planet. However, once they go through our atmosphere, the situation is a bit more complex. That's because different climates on our planet, like the humid ones found near the jungle, have a lot of moisture and oxygen, which will corrode most meteorites. The climate in Antarctica is really dry, so the possibility of meteorites corroding is little to none. More so, it's way easier to spot these rocks on the icy white surface of this area than in any other place on Earth. If you're not scared of the cold, you'll surely freak out when you hear about the winds here. That's because Antarctica is for the most part the windiest place on Earth. Wind speeds have been reported here to reach even 200 miles per hour.